Hey guys, I hope you're well. In this video, I'm going to talk a little bit about weighing up the pros and cons of body weight training versus going to the gym, hitting the weight room as it pertains to hiking. So I think this will be helpful information for anyone who's at that point where they want to be more capable and confident in their hiking, but they're really not sure what kind of carryover going into the gym and hitting the weights will have to hiking. So I'm actually on my way to the gym, and so I thought it'd be a good opportunity to flesh this out a little bit, get into the nuances, not just the pros and cons, but some of the grey areas in between to give the average hiker a better understanding of strength and conditioning principles as it pertains to hiking. But first, I think it might be useful to clarify a little bit more what we're speaking about. Rather than just saying body weight versus going to the gym, I think there's a little bit of a grey area there. What we're really talking about is a minimalist approach versus a maximalist approach. So a minimalist approach would be training at home with like a step, maybe some resistance bands, a couple of dumbbells, versus going to the gym where you have every piece of equipment available to you. So we'll start with the cons of probably what I'm most known for, which is bodyweight training. And I want to list off a couple of things that aren't so good about bodyweight training or training at home in this kind of minimal approach. Number one is that you do need a little bit of space. And so if you don't have that, then probably going to the gym is a better option. So for example, if there's a program that has an exercise that requires a little bit of floor space and you just simply don't have it, then that might lead you to potentially skip or omit what may be like a really important part or exercise in that program. Secondly, there's a mental hurdle to doing the work at home. It's very easy to get procrastinated, and it's very easy to just continue to put it off. Whereas if you're saying to yourself, I'm going to go to the gym at a particular time, you lock that in, then there's some commitment involved in that, and you're just much more likely to get it done. The third main drawback with this minimal approach is that a lot of people think that bodyweight training is simpler or easier, but it's actually not. I think in many cases it can be a lot more difficult to learn how to leverage your body and get into position and find a comfortable position to build strength in the body. If you haven't had a lot of experience, if you are a complete beginner, if you've never lifted up a weight, going straight into bodyweight training in a lot of cases is actually a steep learning curve, because you may not have a really good awareness of where your body is in space and what it's doing and what position you're in. So in a lot of cases, doing simple strength work on machines in the gym can be a lot better for a lot of people. On the plus side to this more minimal approach is simply accessibility. You can get a session in pretty much anywhere, no matter if you're working from home or if you have to travel for work. You have built the skill set to be able to get a workout in pretty much anywhere. It's also free. You don't have to pay for any space. Maybe you need to buy a couple of basic pieces of equipment like some light dumbbells, maybe a step to step up and down on. But for the most part, it's free other than buying a particular program. Links in the description. Yeah, so obviously it's free. You don't have to pay to train in your own house or even when the weather's good, going outside. So that is the obvious benefit. And the third thing is that training with your own body weight is generally functional. It's like this more basic, stripped back approach where you're not relying on a piece of equipment to get you into the right position. And that's typically what we talk about as like functional training. Kettlebells, dumbbells, squats and lunges, free weights, that kind of thing, as opposed to sitting on a fixed piece of gym equipment. And generally speaking, I think that more functional style of free weight training, learning to leverage and master your body to get in and out of position and to feel the movements with intention and intensity only using your body, has a good carryover to hiking. And that's why, for the most part, the information on my channel has been based around this more minimal approach. So there's the pros. It's accessible, it's for the most part free, it is functional training, and is potentially more relevant. So we'll switch gears and we'll talk about the pros and cons of getting into the gym, this more maximal approach to training. Number one is there's still a learning curve when it comes to getting into the gym, learning how to use the equipment correctly. It can be quite overwhelming if you've never lifted a weight in your life to suddenly get into the gym and see all of these pieces of equipment and have absolutely no idea how to use them. But that can be mitigated very easily. That's why there's personal trainers in the gym who will give you an introductory session, take you through the most basic pieces of equipment. You can tell them you want to build a general base of leg strength, and they're going to show you how to use the most basic pieces of exercises. So there's a learning curve, but it's probably not as steep as learning how to manipulate your own body and get into position. And then there's just the obvious drawbacks of going to a gym. They can be busy, it's kind of sweaty, smelly. A lot of the time the music absolutely sucks, depending on what environment you're in. Like, it can just not be a nice place to be sometimes, and that's why it's a very good idea to shop around and find somewhere that feels like the vibe is right for you, where it's clean, it's well looked after, the staff are friendly and helpful. Sometimes you can go to 5 or 6 gyms before you really find somewhere that feels like it fits for you, where you feel comfortable to be able to put the work in and go there regularly and feel happy and excited about going there, as if it's not a chore to do. And if you're following a particular program that is laid out in an intentional way, it can sometimes be quite frustrating when the piece of equipment that you need in the next set isn't available, and there's someone in there doing 10 sets of 10 and taking 3 minutes rest in between each set, looking at their phone. That can be a very frustrating experience when you just really want to get in and get out and get the work done, and there's someone taking their sweet time on the equipment. And I guess that's the other drawback, is that the actual time commitment to go and get the work done can sometimes be a little bit longer, because you've actually got to get out of the house, make your way to the gym like I am now, whether it's in a car or walking or cycling or whatever. And it just adds a little bit of extra time to get there and get back. I find, and I'm quite lucky that I live in Barcelona, in this city that is very, very walkable, that just getting a short walk in or a short cycle into the gym is a really nice warm up to prepare me to get the blood flow going, warm up a little bit, and that way, I'm getting some steps in, and that's contributing to a little bit more relevance in the hiking fitness side of things as well. And the last thing I have on the list for the cons of this more maximal approach and getting into the gym is that you're going to be paying for it. You're going to be paying a membership, a monthly subscription, but I actually see that as kind of a pro as well. It's a double-edged sword. When you sign up to a gym, you are committing to the process of actually doing the work to improve yourself. So when you have that pain of the monthly membership subscription coming out of your account, there's that monthly reminder that puts you back into that state where, yes, I was at a point in time where this was very important to me, and likely it still is. And so that can be a nice reminder to be like, okay, time to get back into the routine, to get the work done, to actually change my situation and make an improvement. So they're the cons for going to the gym. Number one, you have to pay for it. Number two, it can be smelly, sweaty, busy, crappy music, not a nice environment. And there's that learning curve, which is admittedly a lot simpler than bodyweight training, but there's still some learning that needs to be involved if you're a complete beginner, if you've never really stepped into the gym in your life. So they're the cons of the gym. Let's talk about the pros. Number one, it's very, very easy to progress, and it's very easy to see progress. When you're training with just your own body and learning to use your own body weight as leverage to make an exercise harder, that is a really steep learning curve. Whereas if you're in the gym, it's very easy to just put an extra couple of pounds or kilos on the weight that you're doing, and that keeps you motivated, you see progress, and it keeps you coming back because you are seeing an outcome of the work that you're putting in. Whereas bodyweight training can be a little bit vague, like you're always looking for a certain feeling in your body, you're looking for time under tension, maybe squeezing out a few more reps every set, every week. Whereas in the gym, it's very easy to see that progression, and perhaps a lot easier to stay motivated because you can see the numbers going up. And the next pro on the gym side of things is that fixed gym equipment is very safe to use. There's very little that can go wrong. Typically in a gym environment, you're just moving a couple of joints through a range of motion. So if we take a leg extension, for example, you're sitting on the piece of equipment, you're flexing, extending your knee, and there's not really much complexity in that. Like, it's fairly simple and it's very easy to feel a good level of quad engagement on that, for example. And again, it's very easy to step up the weight and see the progress. Whereas if you were to take the body weight version of that, strengthening the quads, getting into a lunge can be very, very difficult for a lot of people to feel that their quads are engaging without having a knee pain experience. So in a lot of cases, it's going to be a much better starting point to get into the gym and start moving some weight around on these fixed machines that were really designed for purely building muscle. And they're designed to be safe for the average person, for the general public to be able to go in and load their body and feel length in muscle and get some reps in. So in that example, when compared to finding a way to load the quads safely, for a lot of people, it's going to be a lot easier to just be able to get into the gym and work on a simple exercise that enables them to feel a good level of length and load and intensity on their quads. And if we flip that around and talk about the other side of the body, you talk about training the hamstrings, then training the hamstrings at home can be quite difficult. There's certainly ways to do it, but it's a lot easier in the gym. You get into a hamstring curl machine, you put some weight on, you get some reps in. So for the true beginner especially, it can be a lot easier to be able to get load onto tissue, to start developing a base of strength just by hitting the gym, maybe having an introductory lesson with a personal trainer who can show you the basics. So there's your pros of going to the gym for this more maximal approach. Very easy to load the muscle and to feel progress. It's relatively safe, and it is also relatively easy to build strength as a beginner. Both of these options are very good options. These are all very important skills, and it really just depends where you're at in your journey. Generally, I think if you've never lifted a weight in your life and you haven't had physical education since you're in high school, then I think it can be very, very useful to get a gym membership, to get shown how to do the basics, and maybe spend 8 to 12 weeks of just developing a base of strength that you can build upon later. That's going to enable you to progress pretty quickly, to build a baseline of strength, and it's going to be relatively safe. I think of this as physiological hygiene. It's like the brushing your teeth. Like, if you've come to me after 30 or 40 years of not having much physical activity and you have an ankle problem and a knee problem and a back problem, then my question is going to be, have you been brushing your teeth? Have you been doing your physiological hygiene? And if you haven't, it's no big deal. You can get that back relatively quickly by just doing some very, very basic things. If you haven't done much training, the good news is that you'll progress pretty quickly. Even going to the gym for 45 minutes 2 times a week and just doing the bare minimum of the basics of training your hamstrings, your calves, your quads, a little bit of core, perhaps doing some functional movements as a warm-up or a cool-down is going to be hugely beneficial, and you'll see progress really quickly. And that's going to be a nice way to stay motivated and to keep building some strength, which is certainly going to have a carryover effect to hiking. It may not be something that you notice initially has a huge benefit or a huge improvement, but certainly the underlying effects are going to be amazing for your overall health, and it will have some carryover to hiking, absolutely. But the one thing that you do have to be pretty careful with is that it can be very easy to get too stuck into a routine where you're not asking the body for more. So for an example, if a year ago you were doing 3 sets of calf raises for 10 reps, and today you're still doing 3 sets of calf raises for 10 reps, then that's not improvement. You haven't been demanding and asking the body for more. The body always needs a reason to change. So the one thing that people are missing a lot of the time is this load and intensity and intention. So we'll talk about those 3 things to wrap up. Number 1, load. Getting load onto tissue is the one thing that most people are missing. They're not getting enough load and demand on the body. Number 2, there's nowhere near enough intensity for the body to change. This is very typical in physical therapy, where they're missing load and missing intensity, and there's just simply not enough demand on the body to change the situation that you're in. In my opinion, physios are far too tentative with people. They're too scared to injure them, and they're simply too conservative about getting load onto tissue, because that's the one thing that really changes the body: getting load onto muscle, getting length into muscle, and doing the exercises with a higher level of intensity. That doesn't mean doing it fast. A lot of the time people are going to benefit from doing the exercise slower with a heavier weight, and that is intensity. I think a lot of people get confused about that word because they immediately think high intensity, like it has to be done with more speed and more velocity, but that's not the only variable of intensity. Intensity can be changed in a lot of different ways. Doing it faster can be certainly valuable in more situations, but a lot of the time for beginners, it's going to be much, much better to do the movements slowly, especially at first. And the final thing there that I wanted to touch on is intention. It can be very, very easy in the gym to simply go through the motions and to be thinking about something else. You could be listening to a podcast, you could be listening to music. Your attention is outside of your body. So the intention and the internal awareness of what you're doing in the movement is probably one of the most important things that people are missing, because they're just simply going through the motions and not really being in their body when they're doing the movements. And that's the big benefit that I see of bodyweight training. I mean, bodyweight training for sure, you can also just go through the motions, but what I like to do is to get people to be very, very focused. That can be very mentally taxing. It isn't the best thing for beginners a lot of the time, especially if they're doing it on their own. But if you have a coach and you have a detailed series of movements that have good cues to keep reminding you to be intentional about how you're moving your body, then I think, in my experience, that's the best way to get an outcome for people. So hopefully you found that conversation useful to get into some of the grey areas and the nuances of training for hiking and strengthening conditioning as it pertains to getting out in the mountains. I'm always pleasantly surprised to hear from hikers that do go to the gym. If you are a gym person, or if you're now from this video pretty convinced that you want to go into the gym and lift some weights, I would love to hear from you. I'm going to head to the gym now. Maybe I'll film a couple of exercises. If you want to see some of that, let me know in the comments, and we'll catch you in the next video. I'll see you on the summit.